Okay, today is April 8th, 2010. My name is Mary Larson, and I'm here with Mrs. Susie Jackson in her home in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Mrs. Jackson, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this project.
You're welcome.
I'd like to start by getting a little bit of general biographical information from you. Could you tell me a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up?
Well, I was born in Tulia, Texas. Mm-hmm. And then I must have been at a very young age. My parents moved to Oklahoma, around the southwestern part, around Mountain View. And I grew up mostly around Mountain View, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Then I went to high school there in Mountain View, and I met my husband. He was still in the Army when I met him. Mm-hmm. I believe my cousin introduced me to him. And it's been too long to remember definite details, but we got married in 1946.
Okay.
And I finished my college, and so did he finish going. We first went to A&M, and then we first went to Cameron College, and then after we graduated from there, we went to Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And that was A&M at that time. And I was a home economics student.
What do you remember the campus being like? What were your first impressions of the campus? Had you been there before?
I had not been there before. It was pretty large. And we lived in a hut that was there. We had a very small place to live, mm-hmm. but we did very well there.
Mm-hmm. Was it an old Quonset hut?
Yes, mm-hmm. It was an old Quonset hut.
Mm-hmm. And was that there from the military? Some of the leftover from the military?
I think it was. I never thought about where it came from, mm-hmm. but that's where we resided.
Do you remember where that was around the campus? Or
it was north and west of the campus.
Okay. And what, you would have been married while you were, now did you marry while you were in college?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what did you do for your social life when you were in college, or were you so busy that you didn't?
We were so busy, I mean to tell you, our social life was very little, really. But we did, we went home for Christmas and Thanksgiving and mm-hmm. that sort of thing, but we didn't really have a, quote, social life.
Mm-hmm. So when you were working in the home, when you were working on your home economics degree, who were some of the, do you have any particular professors that made an impression on you, or were there any classes that made an impression?
Well, I remember some classes, but I don't remember the teachers' names. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
That's all right. What areas were you particularly interested in with home economics?
I was interested in home life, mm-hmm. in helping people to live their life successfully. Mm-hmm. And I liked home economics. I felt like it could give me information and skills that I wouldn't have otherwise, that would help me in my own family life.
Mm-hmm. So what year did you graduate?
I don't know.
Well, let's see. Did you say you got married after 2 years of college? Was that?
Yes, I think I graduated from high school in 1944.
Okay.
I got married in 1946. Mm-hmm. So I,
48.
Might have graduated
Probably
in 48.
48, something like that.
Okay. So right after you left Oklahoma A&M, when you both graduated, what did you do at that point?
Oh, I went to work at a little town, Ripley, and I taught school there,
Okay.
home economics,
Mm-hmm.
and reading and writing for the 8th grade, I think.
And what was your husband doing at that
And
point?
he was going to school working on his master's degree.
Okay. So, how exactly did you end up as part of the Ethiopia adventure?
I'm trying to remember. We had moved back to Stillwater, and Ben was working at the OSU, and he had that call to see if he would be interested,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned you came back to Stillwater. Where had you been in the interim?
Oh,
I guess I
well,
should have gotten you wherever
just,
you were first.
We were at Ripley,
Okay.
and we moved back from Ripley to Stillwater,
Okay.
and it was easier for Ben to go to school and then to go to work
Mm-hmm.
when we lived in Stillwater.
Okay. Did you, before you went off to Ethiopia, had you been working, either of you had you lived someplace else?
No, I don't think so.
Minnesota.
Well,
Minnesota. St. Paul. Minnesota.
we went to Minnesota for Ben to get his. But we went to Minnesota after we had come back from Ethiopia.
Okay. Well, we'll go on to Ethiopia first then, and we can cover the rest of that. But so your husband got the call to see if he was interested in going to Ethiopia,
Yes.
and you thought it would be exciting.
I thought it would be. I thought it would. I was ready for a change.
How big was the town that you grew up in?
Mountain View was a small town.
So you were ready for some travel and
I
some
was
excitement?
ready for some travel and some new experience.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was your husband's position at A&M at that point? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I don't remember at all what he did.
But he would have been with agronomy.
He would have been in agronomy, yes.
Okay. Now, do you remember what year was it when you first went over to Ethiopia?
In 1955.
1955. And who made the arrangements for you to go? What was that process like?
Well, I think Bill Abbott took care of all of that.
Okay.
So that we didn't have to make contact with the airport or any of that tickets. He did that.
Okay.
His office did.
Mm-hmm. Were there any sort of preparations you had to make, like getting particular supplies or shots or
Oh,
anything
yes.
like that?
We had to have some shots. I don't remember what we had to have. I know that I bought shoes for Sherry, for different sizes, and clothing in different sizes to figure out what she would be wearing.
Because she was probably about three, I think you said at the time that you went
Yes.
over. Now, she was your only child at that point?
At that point,
Okay.
she was. And we, Ben and I took extra clothes too.
What did you expect when you went to Ethiopia? Did you know much about it, or was it what you anticipated?
You know, I had a first cousin who husband was over there. He was a veterinarian working with the same group, and she was there. Actually, I don't recall much about correspondence. And really, I wasn't concerned or worried about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you all travel together on the way over, or
Yes, we did.
Okay, so your husband didn't go over first, and then
No, we traveled together.
Okay. Now, where were you first assigned to live and work when
We
you got to Ethiopia?
were in Addis Ababa
Okay.
and lived in a house
Mm-hmm.
and had 2 servants. I believe we had 2 people working for us.
Okay. And at the time, your husband was attached to the college, but my understanding is that the college buildings weren't ready yet.
That's right.
So the classes were going on in Addis.
I don't know if the classes were going on exactly at that time.
Okay.
I really don't know the dates of that.
Okay. But you got there in 1955.
Yes.
Okay. And you were in Addis. Now, who would have been, were you in a neighborhood with other folks from Oklahoma A&M, or?
No, there happened to be a family across the street that was in this group. But we were scattered around. We were not in a compound, all just with that group.
Okay, so you would have had neighbors from all.
We did have neighbors
different-
from all, yes.
Mm-hmm. Who were some of the folks that you remember living around you?
There was one lady, her husband was in the part where they worked with water wells.
Okay.
Another lady was, the administrator of the business manager, Vivian's husband. I'm trying to think what his name was there, and of course my cousin was there.
And what was your cousin's name?
Her name is Charlene,
Mhm.
Charlene Murphy.
Okay.
And the family, he worked with the architecture part of the college. It's very hard for me to remember their names.
Mm-hmm.
Vivian and Ralph Skinner.
So, we can add those in later,
Okay.
too. Now, when you first got there, you said you had a house. Was it in the middle of the city, or was it more on the outskirts?
Oh, it was in the city, I guess you would say.
Okay. And do you remember anything about the size of Addis Ababa? I mean, was it very large?
Well,
at that
it was a
time?
pretty large place. It was the capital.
Mhm.
So it was pretty large. They had a movie house, and they had a real good hospital.
Mhm.
7-Day Adventist Hospital, where my second daughter was born in that hospital.
Okay. Now, what kind of stores and facilities did you have there? Was there a market nearby?
We could buy a market, and we could buy food. I'm just trying to remember, what did we not buy?
Mm-hmm.
We were able to order food from Europe. Well, I bought canned hot dogs and canned bacon. And then I had bought flour and some seasonings. But the fresh vegetables and a lot of the meat, we just ate off of the market.
Mm-hmm. Was that fairly close by to your house, or?
You know, I think it must have been, because I don't remember having to drive very much.
Okay. What other? Well, could you describe the house that you lived in to give us a sense of the layout?
I had in my kitchen. I had a propane stove, and then I had an outside kitchen also.
Ah.
And it was a wood stove, and that's where we baked the bread.
Oh, I bet that was wonderful.
Oh, it was. And I had a real good girl that helped me cook and watch my daughter Sherry. And I had a man that worked outside in the yard. And in our yard we had beautiful sweet pea flowers. Oh, every morning went out and picked these fresh sweet peas because they needed to be picked every day so the new flowers would come on. And in my house I had a large area, kind of a hallway, that was my where I kept the canned goods and supplies. Then to the left was the dining room. It was nice and large, had windows, and then opening into the living room. It was, and we had a fireplace in the living room, and the furniture was furnished. Then we had 3 bedrooms. We kept one bedroom as a storeroom.
So all of the extra things that you'd brought with you for the next, all of Sherry's clothes and for the few years, and the extra clothes that you brought, and some of the supplies.
They would all go in there, and we would lock it up. That's the way it had to be.
Were the houses open for the most part?
Well, the houses were in a compound, and we had a compound wall that was, I believe it was cement, and of course a gate to for the car. And then we had a night guard. Excuse me. But it was not a large area, but it was adequate. I think we may have had a small garden.
So when you mentioned the compound, were there a number of houses in the compound?
Oh, no.
It was just a compound for your
for
house
my
area.
house, yes.
Okay.
Each house was had their own wall.
So each house basically had their own guard, or night guard, or, so there were
Whatever
issues.
they wanted. Yes, so that we always closed our windows, and we had shutters that we closed, wooden shutters that we brought and shut up, so that we felt perfectly safe.
But I guess there had been problems.
We just had to be cautious.
I guess in talking a little bit, we were talking about the compound and having the walls and the night guards. What were the grounds around the house like? You mentioned that you had there was room for a small garden, and you mentioned you had sweet peas and some flowers around.
Yes. Uh, well, there was some lawn,
Mm-hmm.
and I just don't remember details.
Mm-hmm.
What it we had we didn't have a garage, but we had a place to park our car beside the house.
Okay. And speaking of cars, did you do a lot of traveling in the area while you were there?
No, we did not do a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm. Probably
Sorry
not
to
much
say.
much cause to.
No, and I think Ben was gone so much that we just didn't go.
So was he gone a lot at the campus, or I mean, going back and forth?
Well, he could have gone to the campus, but I don't recall him. He may have gone once or twice, but I think when we moved down there is when the crisis started. I may be wrong about that. I'm not for sure when the crisis started.
Okay. Now, but you were. How long were you in Addis Ababa? Do you remember offhand? I mean, was it just a few months, or were you there for a while?
We were there probably a year.
Okay. Now, if you could walk me through an average day when you were in Addis, or was there an average day? But what would you do during the course of the day once you got up?
Well, of course we had, when you think of having a servant, you just think, oh, but they're kind of like a child in a way. You tell them what you want to do, and then it's according to how much maturity they have, and who trained them. That we made bread and made sure that there was always things to be prepared for food, I think I spent a lot of time with Sherry. And I may have visited with my neighbor across the street.
And who was that again?
I don't remember her name.
That's I couldn't remember if that was one of the ones we remembered or one.
Yeah, I didn't remember her name.
Okay. But she was from the Oklahoma area, or
well, she was. Her husband worked in the water. They were digging wells.
They were with the well project.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you very much.
That's all right. I was just trying to get a sense if it was someone from the U.S. or because other people we've talked to have mentioned, there was this Swedish couple across the street, or the Moravians down the road, or so.
There was a Canadian lady there, and she was very nice, very hospitable. And Sherry called her the lady with the blue hair. Because her hair was white, but she really had put blue coloring on
one of those
there.
blue rinses, Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and speaking of Sherry, who did she? I mean, she spent time with you. Did she have playmates in the neighborhood?
Yeah. I don't remember if she did or not.
Okay,
that's terrible. I've just forgotten.
Well, it's been a long time too.
I haven't thought about this.
Now, why don't you tell me a little bit about when you moved to Diradawa?
We moved to Diradawa. Well, that was really something. We moved, and my Charlene had been born. So we must have been in Addis Ababa over 2 years.
Well, let's go back and cover her then too. Before we get to Diradawa, we should talk about the addition to the family, I suppose.
Okay, yes. Well, when I got pregnant, I went to the a doctor, Dr. Steen, and he was a missionary doctor at the Seventh-day Adventist Hospital. And my cousin, Charlene, had her baby there also.
Okay.
So I had Charlene at the hospital, and a few months after that, we moved to Dergawa.
Okay. What was that hospital like?
Well, it was very clean, very orderly. But because we were Americans, different, they didn't act like nurses that were, that you're going to do what I say, you know, that authority. So my cousin, she just got up out of her bed and went to the bathroom when she was in labor. And the nurses didn't stop her. They just couldn't stop her. But we had good hospital care.
So that wasn't a worry for you while you
No,
were
it
over
wasn't.
there. Did you go there when you were in Diradawa and Alamaya too, or was that a little further?
They were so far away. The only time we would go to Addis Ababa, I don't think I ever went to Addis Ababa after I got into Alamaya.
Okay.
At Alamaya, we had a nurse, and she was Gwen, and her husband worked in animal science, and her job was to watch her responsibility was the staff. And I believe she also looked at students. But if, like Charlene, had a lot of allergy and ear trouble, she would take care of that. She was as good as a doctor. Just very good. So we, I'm sure, if we went back to Addis Ababa, we'd have to take a plane. And I'm sure there were good doctors in Diradawa, but I don't think we ever went to them.
Okay. So, well, you've got Charlene born now.
I got Charlene born.
So, and a few months later you moved to Diradawa. Now, that was probably about when the college opened?
Yes, I think that's when it started.
And
about that time.
Okay, so were you in Diradawa because there wasn't housing available yet?
That's right.
Okay. So why don't you tell me about the move there?
Okay. Well, we moved, of course we moved all our furniture and everything we had there. Again, we had 3 bedrooms, and one of them was kind of a storage room. And Sherry had her own room, and Charlene had a room. I believe you were together. Were you separate? I'm just remembering. I think that maybe Sherry and Charlene were in the same room. But we had a fireplace and a nice kitchen. The one thing that we didn't have was electricity all the time.
Okay, that was one of the things I was going to ask about, both water and electricity.
Yeah. Well, with electricity, each man on the staff took their turn turning the electricity on and off. And if it was one person's time, one man, I can't think of his name right now, you knew you better have everything done at 9 o'clock. because he was going to turn electricity off. And our refrigerators stayed cold all night long.
Mm-hmm. As long as you didn't open them, right?
As long as you didn't open them.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing was I had to heat my baby's bottle at night and take a candle and go in the kitchen and light, that was my light.
Mm-hmm.
And it was warm enough there that we didn't lock our house, and our kitchen door was open. And I looked out through my kitchen door one day, and there was an owl, a white owl, and he was looking at me, and our eyes met, and just a passing thing. So we had animals come to try to get our garbage.
Did they try to get your garden too?
Fortunately, I don't think we had a lot of trouble with our garden. But we had a beautiful garden, and we had beautiful plants there. Oh, they were gorgeous.
What kinds of things
Oh, we had geraniums just big as a wash tub.
Oh.
And you could just stick something in the ground and it would grow. It was really nice. And people who had a green thumb really enjoyed it. I think I was so busy with the children that I didn't really do justice to my yard. But we did have a garden.
What kinds of things did you have in the garden?
Well, we had onions and green beans and sweet peppers. I'm trying to think what else we had.
Yeah, I was just wondering what grew well there, but it sounds like anything
Everything
probably
grew
would.
well. It was wonderful. And we could buy vegetables at the market. Beautiful, big cauliflower. Oh.
So how big was Diradawa?
Pardon me?
Do you have a sense of how big Diradawa was?
It wasn't a big town.
Okay. So you could leave your doors open. It wasn't like Addis where
That's
you
right.
had to have things
Yes.
locked up.
Yeah. We felt pretty safe there.
Were a lot of your neighbors there from A&M?
Yes. Let's see who was my neighbors.
I was just trying to get a sense if you were all in, if you tended to be in one area or it was more like Addis where you were spread out.
And now I'm getting Dirdawa and Almaya mixed up.
Okay.
In Dirdawa, we lived upstairs. We lived over something. I don't know what we lived over. But we had a nice, large place.
Were you there long?
Not long.
Okay. Just till something opened up
I
at
just
Alamaya.
don't remember how long. But we got together, the group, we saw each other often enough that we kept in contact. And there was a friendship and a feeling of that we were close, that we could depend on each other, we could visit. In fact, we were our own entertainment. That was the thing about it, but we didn't have TV or anything that we had to do our own entertainment. Which was good.
Yeah, what did you tend to do when you got together?
Well, I think we usually had a party. We ate and talked. And we would have, like Halloween, we danced. Yeah, we did dancing. Oh, we would just, I don't know what the music was, who provided it, or I don't remember that. I just remember we did a lot of dancing.
I was just going to ask if there were any musicians in the group. Or,
No, I don't think so.
okay. And speaking of not having television, how did you get your news when you were in Diradawa or Alamaya,
Yeah.
for that matter? I mean, news from
Well,
the
it
U.S.
didn't bother me. I didn't have any news. I didn't care.
Did you get letters, I mean, as far as family and
Yes,
so on?
we got letters. Yeah. We got letters, and I was not a good correspondent.
Well, it sounds like you would have been busy.
Yes, I was. I was busy, and then I started working half a day, or I worked, I think, about 4 days. Maybe I worked at the library, probably part-time.
At the college there?
At the college, and that. And when I was going to Cameron College, I worked in the library, so I had some experience that I could fall back on, and that's the reason that I helped in the library.
And what were you doing there? I mean, just general, a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I was responsible for the library.
Oh, okay.
I did checking in and checking in the books and checking to see that they returned them, and the students had books that they I guess the college furnished books. I'm not for sure, but we had a lot of books for classes.
Okay.
And a lot of research books for them. It wasn't a big library, but it was adequate, I guess.
But they'd set it up with the research materials the students
Yes,
would need.
set it up for their classwork.
Do you remember if you got any money to buy new books, or if those were just things that were ordered as part of the process?
You know, I don't remember what happened, what we did.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of, you think about building a new college.
Yeah.
There are so many things going on with
Oh,
the physical
my.
plant and with having students and dorms and places to live and places to eat and the library, and how does
That's
all
right.
that get set
Well,
up?
the library was set up by someone else. I can't think of her name, but she probably ordered up quite a few things. But I don't remember much about ordering. It's been too long ago.
Well, speaking of schools and libraries, were at least Sherry probably would have been in school for a little bit while you were over there?
Well, for the children, there was one lady who taught all the children that were school age.
Okay.
And I think Sherry was in the first grade. And kindergarten and first grade. But their school was completely separate from the college.
Would it have been? But was it essentially run by Oklahoma A&M at the time,
No,
or
I
the
don't
school,
think
or
so. It was run by just the group there.
Okay, so the families that would have been there, or
Yeah, the families would have organized it and
Okay.
set it up.
okay.
I don't think that the OSU had anything to do with that,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
No, I was just wondering because one place we were talking to someone, they said, well, there was a mission school nearby, and some of the kids went there.
Yeah.
But I didn't. That was on one of the other farms. So
Yeah, that could have been down in another place. But we didn't. We were way out in the boondocks. We were independent family type thing. There wasn't much, but we had church. One of the men was a very dedicated person, and he would give sermons, So we had church on Sunday.
Do you remember who that was, or?
No.
Okay. It's if you think of it, we can put that in later.
Yeah, and they would be a good person to interview.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you remember with the seasons, if the changes in the seasons meant a change in what you were able to do as far as being outside a lot or traveling? I mean, during the rainy season, were there things that were problematic that you remember?
You know, I don't remember.
Okay.
It was always sunshiny. It was cold, kind of cool in the mornings,
Mm-hmm.
and by 1 o'clock you were ready to take off any jackets you had on, and it was summer.
Mm-hmm.
And the sun was shining.
Was that at a high altitude, Deer
Yes.
Okay. About the same as Alamaya, or?
Alamaya was Diridao was way low.
Okay.
It was hot there. But Alamaya was up a little higher.
Okay.
But I don't think it was as high as Addis Ababa.
Okay. So Diridao was lower and a little more desert-like.
Yeah, that's right.
And then.
It was very desert. We had beautiful poinsettias.
Mm-hmm. How far was Diridao from Alamaya? Do you remember?
All I remember was a huge, dangerous road that wound around mountains.
Mm-hmm.
It was gravel. There was nothing to keep you.
No guardrails.
No guardrails. It was really a thrill every time you went to Diridao and came back.
Did you do that a lot? I mean, either.
No.
Okay. Was your husband having to go from when you were living in Diridao? Did he have to go to college?
To college. He did.
He had to do that every day.
Yeah, I
pretty
think
much?
so.
That would have been an adventure.
Boy, oh boy, yes.
Because
Those
other
big old
people have
trucks
mentioned
coming
that.
by.
Mm-hmm.
Those roads were dangerous. But you know, the roads that the Italians built when they were in Ethiopia, oh, they're so good. Oh, boy, I sure admire their expertise that they have.
Some real engineers,
Yes.
But that wasn't the road between Diridao and
No,
Alamaya.
it wasn't.
So, do you remember about how long you were in Diridao before you went to Alamaya? Or was it maybe a few months?
Let's see, Charlie was born in August, and we had Christmas there. We probably were there quite a few months
Okay.
before we moved. We were able to move.
And Alamaya was where you said you saw the owl and had the beautiful garden?
Yes.
Was that? Okay. And did you still, was there still staff at the house in Alamaya, or was that just in Addis? You'd mentioned having someone to help with the cooking.
The cooking, yes, we had servants.
Okay.
And we couldn't do without the servants. We couldn't begin to work, to do housework. And because we had to boil our water, we had to prepare everything from scratch. And my goodness, you have to wash clothes. It would just be too much for one person to do, especially with a family.
Right. What were the washing facilities like?
Well, we brought a washing machine with us, and it was outside on a cement. Maybe we had a cement porch, but it was out there, and we just left the washing machine out there and had tubs. Oh, I'll tell you something interesting. After I had my baby, of course, we moved to Alamaya. Well, see, Alamaya is not a town. We lived near Alameda. We were out. Boy, I mean to tell you, we were out there. And our dear friends, Lucille and Hugh Hedger, Sherry played with their two daughters and went to school with them. And very dear friends. But I don't know why, but they had a goat. They acquired a goat, and that goat had the whole campus that he was free to roam in. And he was a nuisance.
As goats are wont to
As
be.
goats are, yeah. And I looked out the window one day, and here was this goat on his hind legs eating my panties off of the clothesline. Oh, I only had 3 pair of panties that would fit because I just had Charlene.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so mad at that goat. But, because I valued the Hedgers' friendship, I held my peace. And I knew that that goat wouldn't live forever. And one day, that goat disappeared. And no one asked anything about him. So he probably ended up in a stew pot somewhere.
His name was Stu.
Yeah. But we had a lot of friendship, a lot of comrade things.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was more or less a workaholic, and he spent a lot of time just working.
Mm-hmm.
And but there were free times when people would get together and visit, and we had a good time.
Mm-hmm. Did you mainly socialize with the folks from Oklahoma, or did you get to know some of the students or some of the locals?
I didn't socialize with any of the students. And the local people, they were way off. I mean, the town.
Oh, that's right, because there wasn't a village at Alameda.
Yeah, there was no...
Just the college.
There was no town.
So there weren't really any local people
locally.
locally.
There was no local people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Hugh and Lucille knew people more than we did. And there was a missionary group that they knew. So there was some facilities, some people that probably did more than what we did in socializing with others, but we stayed mostly with the group.
Mm-hmm.
It was easier that way.
Right. Now, what parts of the assignment over in Ethiopia would you say were the most difficult for you?
What was most difficult?
Was it just the logistics, or was it being away from home, or?
Well, of course, I missed my mother and my family back in the States. But there was a lot. I just can't. I don't remember that I felt a need. I think more. It's just hard to say what I wanted. I know that I kept busy, and I was occupied most of the time, so I don't... the ones that did not work, a lot of the women worked as secretaries.
Mm-hmm.
And but those of us who stayed at home, like I had part-time job, but a lot of times I would go and visit with someone in their home that was not working.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us had small children, so we kind of kept busy at home.
Plenty busy. Yeah. What did you enjoy the most about your time there?
What did I enjoy the most? I enjoyed the weather. It was just wonderful. And I enjoyed the fresh flowers and the fresh fruit. I enjoyed that. And it's funny, I didn't miss the radio. I didn't miss that much. I think just the way that we lived, I enjoyed having servants to wash my dishes. I really enjoyed that.
I can see that.
And I like to have entertainment. I like to entertain. And so I enjoyed having people over.
Now, while you were over in Ethiopia, were there particular American customs that you tried to keep up, like Thanksgiving or...
Yes, we kept up Thanksgiving. We had Easter hunts for the children.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we had Christmas dinners and the children gave programs at Christmas and at Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And the summertime, I guess it's according to when we sometimes when it was vacation time, people would take a chance and go to another country and see another country, something like that. But for the going fishing was one, going camping was another, and that was fun.
Did you do that right around?
In that area,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And we enjoyed that a lot. The fresh fish and the men did a lot of hunting, and they would bring back wild boars, and that meat was so sweet and tender. Oh, it was good.
That sounds wonderful. Were there, if you were keeping up some of these U.S. traditions, were there things that you had to do differently? I mean, were there differences in some of the celebrations? I mean, were you able to get a turkey, for example? Did you have to substitute something else for a turkey, or?
I think that we probably had turkey. We had a animal science man there. I think he raised turkeys. I don't believe that we had to substitute. We may have had ham and turkey. There was a good market down in Diordawa that was by an Italian man had it, and we would get things from him.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't have trouble getting anything that you'd normally have for some of these?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. Don't remember having trouble with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, did you learn any Ethiopian traditions or any?
Any Ethiopian traditions?
While you
I
were
don't
there?
remember that I did a one.
Okay.
I just don't remember.
Okay. So it wasn't something that, well, and especially if you weren't, you know, if you were at the college and there wasn't a village there.
It was hard to get. You really had to have a point in doing that.
Yeah. Was there anything you remember in Addis or Diordawa as far as annual celebrations or festivals? Anything you remember seeing?
Let's see. I think they had. We lived in Thailand for 18 years, and I get Ethiopia and Thailand mixed up. I don't remember that they had something that I would remember. I don't remember things that in Ethiopia.
Okay. we were talking right before we took a little break about celebrations, and you had mentioned that there were birthday parties
Yes.
as part of
Birthday
this.
parties and Easter egg hunts. We took every opportunity to have fun.
Hmm. Some sort of a party.
Yes.
Now, we were talking about the turkeys, that there might have been turkeys around and so on. As far as the local animal population, what do you remember there? You mentioned the owl. Were there, what other animals, what other wildlife did you see?
Yeah, well, an interesting thing was the hyenas.
Mm-hmm.
They would come to, they would try to get in our garbage and eat. They ate everything.
Mm-hmm.
There was a man there called the Hyena Man, and somehow I never did go, but he would get hyenas to come, and you could go and watch the hyenas with safety,
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. They did it at night,
And he was a local.
and he
A
was a
local
local
gentleman?
man,
Mm-hmm.
local native.
Mm-hmm.
And then, let's see, I'm trying to remember if we had any pets. I don't think we had any pets. I don't think we had any. Well, one time Ben brought home a monkey. That was when we were living in Addis Ababa.
Mm-hmm.
And this monkey was so cute. I'm trying to remember if I think, seemed like it was before Charlene was born.
Mm-hmm.
And he was jealous of Sherry.
Huh.
Oh, yes. One time, he jumped on Sherry, and he just was going to bite her, and he moved his head back and forth after he had latched onto that sweater,
Mm-hmm.
and her poor little arm would have been mincemeat, but he wasn't able to get down to her skin.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of times, and then there was a little deer that we got.
Mm-hmm.
But for most of the time, we didn't have any pets or animals, but just that monkey and that little deer.
Okay.
And he didn't last long.
The deer or the monkey?
Both of them.
Okay.
No, when I saw how dangerous that monkey was,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, I didn't want anything to happen to Sherry.
Yeah. How do you think, did the children take the whole Ethiopian experience in stride? Well, Charlene would have, because she was born there, but
Yeah,
did Sherry adapt real well when you first went over? And
I think she was small enough that she did.
yeah, just
She had playmates there with when we moved to Alamaya. So I think her little social life was adequate.
did you or your husband or either of the children learn Amharic there, the local language at all, or
No,
it wasn't
we
something?
may have learned some, like Bucka Finnish. We knew that. That's Bucka Finnish that's enough. I don't want any more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It was
Did you learn any Ethiopian dishes while you were there? I mean, did you have
And-
Ethiopian food at all?
we had injera and wat.
Okay.
That's kind of like hamburgers and French fries. Oh, and it was good. We also had our first pizza there. It was baked from Deir Dawa. And it was thick bread with the dressing on top.
Do you think it's because there'd been such an Italian presence
I think
in
so.
Ethiopia?
Yes, I think very definitely so.
But there was a pizza parlor in Diridau.
Yes.
Too bad they didn't deliver.
Yes.
It's like, well, you've got a pizza place in a college campus, you know.
Yeah.
Did you learn to make any Ethiopian dishes or?
I didn't learn over there.
Mm-hmm.
I brought recipes back, but I just didn't learn.
Mm-hmm. I just wondered if you maybe if the family had a favorite dish that you made when you got back.
No, not necessarily. Not really.
Yeah. Now, were there any political problems or political tensions while you were over in Ethiopia that you were aware of that affected what
I
you were
don't
doing?
think there was. I know that we really respected their king, and he was a good man. The thing is that he didn't move fast enough to please the people. He wanted to go slowly and do things, and there was a group in there that they wanted everything done immediately, and they didn't understand how a nation cannot progress real fast. And especially when you have tribes and different languages, my goodness. It's a hard thing to be a ruler over something like that.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about Haile Selassie?
And I'm talking about Haile Selassie.
Mm-hmm.
And his sons were not as helpful as they could have been, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have that problem. Did not come until after we left.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that when we were talking during the break that Haile Selassie had actually come to Alamaya
Oh,
while
yes.
you were there. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I think he came when we had a grand opening or grand celebration of the college.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we were very busy. My friend Lucille was in the cafeteria, and she was in charge of the food, and all of us shared what we had. I had my tea set. I had a silver tea set, and we were all thrilled to for him to use something that was ours.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have that tea
I
set?
still have that set.
We should take a picture of that if it's around.
Yes, I would. Yes, we have. It's upstairs, Sherry.
Oh, it's upstairs. Wow, that's impressive. So, what was it? Was he there for a few days? Do you remember? Or
He must have been there for more than one day.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where he stayed or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And did you all get to meet him?
Yes, I have a picture of Sherry shaking hands with him. And see, our impression of the king is very positive, very admirable man. He loved his country, I know that. He loved his people. And of course, when we heard what had happened to him, it just was devastating. Because we knew him as he was not acting superior and almighty.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gave the money to the children, that 2 or 3 little boys came and he talked to them, and he went down into his pocket and got some money and gave it to them like a great uncle would do or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just really thrilled. So.
This was on the campus?
On the campus. Mm-hmm. So our experience, I would say, in Ethiopia was very positive.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, when he was there, all of the staff was presented to him. And I couldn't decide whether to have my gloves on or off to shake his hand. There's so many formal things to do.
Mm-hmm. With royalty, there's always different rules.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like it would have been quite an experience.
It was. It really was.
Mm-hmm. Now, what, in your opinion, I mean, after knowing some of these other families from Oklahoma who were over in Ethiopia. What do you think was the one thing that caused the most culture shock?
Coming back to the States, that was a culture shock.
So it wasn't going out to Ethiopia that was the problem. It was more coming back.
in. How ungrateful Americans are for what they have. They just don't appreciate what we have. It's very sad.
Had you had a chance to come back to the U.S. during your time there at all?
We came back we were there 4.5 years and we came back twice.
Okay. So you'd had a chance to see family.
Yes, in 2 years' time we came back.
Were you back for a couple of weeks, or when you came back, or?
I think we were back for quite a while. Probably a month or so.
Okay. And how did you do that? Where did you fly out of to come back?
Well, we flew, we left Addis Ababa and we went to, on one of our trips, we took some time and toured Europe. And Sherry went swimming in the Zuider Zee, the sea. And on our way back from Ethiopia, we went on a big ship. And that was quite an experience. All they wanted was cottage cheese and hot dogs. And here we had all this lovely food to eat.
So you took a ship back to the U.S.
To the U.S.
But you'd flown out the first time.
But we flew the first time.
Okay. But you took the scenic route on the way back.
That's right. Yes.
So all the kids wanted was cottage cheese and hot dogs.
Yeah.
So you did travel a little bit overseas too while you were.
Yes, when we came back, on our way back, we traveled. Ben got to see some of Germany where he was in the war, and let's see, Germany and Netherlands and France, in that area. So we got a pretty good education on different countries. And more appreciation for the United States.
Now, when you returned, you said it was a tough adjustment, that there was more of a culture shock coming back.
Yes.
What did you do when you returned to the U.S.? And what did your husband do?
Well, let's see. He had been offered a scholarship to work on his doctor's degree in Minnesota.
Okay.
So that was where we went. Of course, we went back to Oklahoma, and then we came to Minnesota for him to start to school. That was different. It was very different because in Ethiopia the sun is shining every day. Lovely, breezy weather. Just, it was really nice in Alamaya, on the campus. And then when we got to Minnesota, wow.
Talk about a shock.
Yes, it was a great shock.
So, your husband did his doctoral work there. As over the years, did your family travel to other locations outside of the U.S. because of his work?
Well, after he got his degree, his doctorate degree, we went back to Oklahoma, to Stillwater, and stayed a year or two. And then Rockefeller Foundation offered him a job to go to Thailand. And his degree was in genetics, plant genetics. So he knew a lot about rice, but he didn't know the details of growing it. So we went to Thailand. We went to the Philippines for about 6 months, and he learned how rice was grown and all the insects and the fertilizer and all the details of that. And then we moved from the Philippines to Thailand.
Okay, and this was all on the Rockefeller Foundation.
That's right.
Mhm.
And Charlene and Sherry went to a school in the Philippines that's taught in English. It was kind of hard because, second language, teaching in a second language, it was just hard for them to understand them.
Mm-hmm. And how old would they have been?
Well, Sherry was probably in the 5th grade, 9th grade. Sherry was in the 9th grade. And Charlene was probably in the 6th or something like that.
Okay. And then how long were you in Thailand after the Philippines?
In Thailand, we were there about 17 and a half years. Sherry and Charlene finished high school there at an American sponsored school.
Mm-hmm.
And they qualified them, it was a very good school, qualified them to enter college,
Mm-hmm.
if that's what they wanted to do. So that their education was pretty well taken care of.
Mm-hmm. So you had quite a stretch in Thailand then.
Yes, we did.
What was that like?
Well, we came home every year
Mm-hmm.
for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a nice home. We lived in a home, and then we lived in an apartment house. And it was felt a little bit more secure in a large apartment.
Mm-hmm.
The apartments were big compared to when you think about apartments here.
Mm-hmm.
It was much. We had a swimming pool, and in Thailand, the traffic is heavy. So I did have a driver and a cook. When we were in a house, we had a man who worked in the yard during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had another man for night guard at night.
And where were you in Thailand?
We were in Bangkok.
Okay. Which is a very busy city.
Yes, it is. It's a big, busy city.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a driver for quite a while, and then I decided I could drive. Especially after we caught our driver siphoning gas out of our car, putting in another car.
Now, at this point, was your husband still with the Rockefeller Foundation?
He was with the Rockefeller Foundation.
So that whole time was...
All in Thailand was it with Rockefeller Foundation.
Was there a particular institute with the foundation? Or...
No, let's see. It was Rockefeller Foundation. They were involved in a medical school there in Thailand.
Okay.
And I don't know what all they supported. I'm just not for sure what Rockefeller supported, but I know that they supported a school for doctors and
Okay.
probably nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent, and Ben did too, send people back to the States
Mm-hmm.
to get more education.
Okay. And all of this was based on his agronomy work, his genetic work at this point.
Yes, all rice.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that your daughters, when they graduated from high school there, were set for college. Where
Yes.
did they go to school?
Well, they went back to Stillwater. Sherry went back to Stillwater and finished there with her microbiology. Then she became a laboratory technician, and we just every year Charlene and Sherry were able to come back,
Ah, that's nice.
and for the summer,
Mm-hmm.
which was really nice. Start is the name of the school that, or university that Ben worked with. And they were associated with rice development. The people that Ben worked with were very, very intelligent, very polite. They were just great people. But they needed someone with knowledge of improving rice, and they just needed the expertise that Ben could offer.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt very humble that they wanted him to come because they had so much on their own already going. But he added a lot to their rice, the rice development. But through that research work, they were able to cause the farmer to raise rice that needed hardly any fertilizer. They grew rice without fertilizer. But their enemy were the bugs that and fungus, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just bred, plant breeding. They just bred these rices to overcome some of these
Mm-hmm.
problems.
Now, since you had two overseas experiences like that, how did your time in Ethiopia compare to your time in Thailand, would you say? I mean, I know you were in Thailand for longer, but just overall, how would those
did it
two
compare?
experiences compare?
Well, I think I was much more active in Thailand than I was in, because of my children were so small. Because I helped get an orphanage started in Thailand. I worked with the church a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just put a good word in for the Presbyterian Church. I'm not a Presbyterian, but they were the first ones to bring printing into Thailand.
Hmm.
And Christians have blessed many nations with their knowledge, with expertise like that. That you can be knowledgeable about that Christians, when they go out somewhere, they can really make a difference. If they are truly sincere and have a goal in mind, what they want. And the Thais respect diligence. They admired the way the missionaries lived. because they were good people. They didn't get into trouble. Honest. And there was a school that was started by the Presbyterians. The church they had on the campus is where we went to church. We went to a church where there was about 25 nationalities. And most of the time, our preachers were retired ministers. And they would come and stay 2 years. And there was a organization that we contacted for our to bring a pastor over. Mm-hmm. And I learned to be a secretary of the church. I learned to use their printing. Taught Sunday school,
Mm-hmm. And these are things you could be involved in because your children weren't as small as they had been when you were in Ethiopia.
There were just facilities available.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, wonderful. Well, getting back to Ethiopia, just a few questions to wrap up. As you think back on that, how do you feel now about your experience over there and about the project?
Well, I tell you, when we see, like this man who received a recognition for the work he had done, the Ethiopian man, I'm sure all of the men who taught that young man, of course he's not a real young man now, but anyway, it's kind of like a father so proud of his child. We're proud of what they have done, sowing 4.5 years. Some sowed more than what we did in that project, in those boys. And to see some results is rewarding. And I think that's the main thing, is that what they gave, they have seen that it would paid off. It's not something, and it's still going on. That's the thing about it.
Yeah. Now, the award that you mentioned, was that the World Health Organization?
Oh, maybe it was.
Award,
the World Health. It was something like a Peace Prize, but
Okay.
it was not. It was not.
We can fill that in.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, have you kept up friendships with some of the people that you met when you worked with over in Ethiopia?
Yes.
It sounds
yes.
like from
Yes,
some
we
of the
have.
things you've mentioned.
We until after we came back from Thailand, we every year attend the 2 year. Every 2 years they have a banquet, a day where you just go and you see what people brought from Thailand, see pictures and see old friends and see the children, how they've grown, and just renew friendships. Then we had 2 or 3 that we especially kept up with. We kept up with the nurse, Gwen, and then the Hedgers, yes, they were the other friend.
So, and those were folks from Ethiopia.
From Ethiopia,
Okay.
and living in Oklahoma City and Stillwater.
Now, are there questions that we haven't asked you about? The editorial are there things that we haven't talked about your experiences in Ethiopia that you'd like to touch on? Or anything about the legacy of that project that you'd like to discuss?
Well, no. The only thing I can think of is that it was a rich experience. At the time, I didn't realize what a privilege it was. And it added a new dimension to our lives. And because of that experience, I'm a bigger person than otherwise.
Mhm.
That's what I would say.
What kind of impact do you think it had on your family as a whole?
Well, our overseas living broadened our viewpoint till that we can understand other countries. We understand a lot of positions that they are in that we wouldn't have thought, wouldn't be able to think about even because of, we just wouldn't have thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
We were exposed to a lot of things like that.
And your daughters had the chance growing up to live in different cultures
Yes.
and be exposed to that too.
And they have a different viewpoint from their peers
Mm-hmm.
of things because of that.
Mm-hmm. Would you do it over again? If you, I mean,
Yeah.
if
Yes,
you
I
had,
would.
if you had
I
the chance
would.
to make the decision again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would do it over again.
Now, once you are obviously now back in Oklahoma.
Yes.
What did your family do after the 17 and a half years in Thailand?
Well, my family, of course, Sherry had a job, and she was, and my other daughter, Charlene, was married.
Mm-hmm.
So they already had their life started.
Right. They were set up.
They were set up, yes. And we, from Thailand, we went to Arkansas.
Okay.
And Ben had sabbatical leave. And then after we were in Arkansas at Fayetteville, we went to Mississippi for about 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
where he worked in rice.
Okay. And was that at the university there?
At the, what do you call it? It's
The
connected,
extension?
connected with the university.
Oh, experimental station.
Experimental station, yes. And then after we were there for 5 years, we came to Tulsa. I was ready to go and settle down and see
All the
my
roaming.
girls and see my grandchildren and be part of the family again.
Mm-hmm. So that's how you got back to Oklahoma.
So that's how we got back.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to mention while we're talking?
While we're talking, well, I think that that we were guided by the Lord to do this. I think that we were not mature Christians, but we were striving for, to be good Christian people and to follow the Lord. And I think that whatever effort we tried, God honored that. And He blessed the people through us. And that is my thinking on it, is that because the Lord works in many ways, and I'm grateful to be a child of God.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you so much for your time, and to Sherry Jackson, who is also here helping out in silent ways. We appreciate her presence as well. And thank you for participating.